Welcome to The Sober Unicorn. We are a gay-hosted, all-inclusive podcast about sobriety and addiction recovery for the LGBT plus community and all of our allies. I am your host, Holden, and thank you for joining us today. Hey, it's Holden, and I am an alcoholic. I hope everybody's doing well today. Today, I am being joined by Sean.
Hey, Holden.
Hey, Sean, how are you doing today?
I'm good. How are you?
Doing fabulous. So I wanted to bring you on. Sean is actually from season 1, and he discussed like how important the sponsorship role was for him and how it kickstarted his program. And if anybody listener-wise doesn't know, that Sean is my sponsor. So I wanted to kind of bring him on and go over step 1, the fact of that we are powerless and our lives have become unmanageable due to alcohol. And I know how important it was for me going into the rooms that my sponsor, Sean, aka Sean, broke down the fact of that I wasn't just a drinker, that I truly was an alcoholic. And I know for me that played a huge turning point in my sobriety. So Sean, like for you, I know that kind of was a big part for you as well. So when you finally stepped foot into the program, and because you knew you had a drinking problem, how important was it for your sponsor to break that down? And how did he break it down to show you that you're not just a drinker, that you're a fucking problematic alcoholic?
Yeah, so my sponsor broke it down for me. I think it was on my third day, or third time going back to the rooms. Like the first 2 days, he was just like, keep coming back, I'll see you here tomorrow. And he had already kind of started the sponsorship process before he and I officially became sponsee. It was very important in the beginning for me to understand what it meant to be an alcoholic and for me to fully concede to the fact that I was powerless over alcohol. I didn't know what being powerless over alcohol meant until he explained it to me in a way that nobody else could. Friends and family had told me like, hey, I think you have a problem, and I'd just be like, you know what, I don't think I have a problem, I'm good. And then it wasn't until all these things in my life had become unmanageable that I was even willing to accept or listen to what it meant to be an alcoholic. And I mean, kind of like what it says on page 24 is the fact that most alcoholics, for reason yet obscure, have lost the power of choice. And I didn't know before that I had lost the power of choice in drink. It was just kind of something that I considered to be normal. And my sponsor is very much so by the book, and he started going over what it truly meant to be an alcoholic, that I was powerless, and that my life has and will continue to be unmanageable if, I don't work the steps. And then the book continues to go on to saying that even with sufficient force, the memory of and suffering of humiliation, even a week or a month ago, we are without defense against the first drink. And he explained to me in a very basic way the mental obsession, the physical allergy, the phenomenon of craving, all of those things that I had kind of questioned in the beginning. And I didn't understand what any of that meant. And he broke it down and was like, yep, you're an alcoholic. And then from there, that's when I had this connection with him to where like, yeah, he gets it. He gets me. He understands exactly what I'm thinking, what I'm feeling. And I was at a point in my life, at least I remember very vividly, like my first day, finding the rooms. I didn't know what I was looking for. All I knew was that I needed to find something that I, at that point, didn't even know existed.
Yeah, I mean, I know that when you broke it down to me as well, when I stepped into the rooms, I was like, no, I'm not an alcoholic. Like, I just don't have enough willpower. And for me, I thought it was always about willpower. I've always kind of felt that addiction in general was a willpower thing and a mindset, because in my life, I'm always in control of everything. So why is this one thing in my life something that I can't control? And I don't think I could ever admit to myself that it was something I couldn't control. And so like going into the rooms, I could never even say for at least, I think it was a week and a half, I couldn't even say that I was an alcoholic. Like, I was like, I'm Holden. And then everybody looked at me waiting for the next part. But I'm like, nah, bitch, that ain't gonna happen. Not today. So it took me a minute until, like, Sean kind of when I first stepped in, of course, if you want to know how like his and I sponsor sponsee relationship came about, you can go back into season one. But he broke down on page 20 like the difference, the three types of drinkers between a moderate drinker that they have no trouble giving up liquor. It's kind of they drink it if they have a good reason for it, just such as a party, a wedding, so on and so forth. But other than that, they don't need it, they don't want it, they don't really care for it. And then you have like the hard drinker that he does drink. Like he could drink for a year or two and set it down. Like he'll go balls to the wall, and but then one day he's just like, oh, okay, I'm kind of over it, and just set it down and leave it alone. And then you have like the alcoholic that at some point, as it says on page 21, at some point of drinking in the drinking career, he begins to lose all control of his liquor consumption once he starts to drink. And so Sean like straight up asked me, he's like, can you have one drink and stop? And I'm like, I had to think about that. And I was like, fuck no. I I was never a person that could have one drink and just that be enough. And no matter how much friends, family, and lying, now that I look back, I was constantly lying to family. Like, oh, I bet you're headed to the bar. No, of course not. I'm headed home to study. And like I'm like in the bar's parking lot, like lying, trying to get off the phone. And I never realized how much I was lying to everybody around me and trying to lie to myself. Because I never wanted to admit that. Because I mean, at the beginning, I felt it was embarrassing. But now I kind of feel it's empowering for me, at least, to be able to tell somebody that at once you were an alcoholic or an addict of some sort, and that you were able to get it together via the power of a group, a 12-step program, yourself, God, whatever it may be, that you were able to get it together and move forward. So for you, were you able, Sean, to go in on your first night of a 12-step and say, I'm Sean, I'm an alkie?
Yeah, I did, and a lot of that is because of where I was at that point in my life. Like when when we say our lives have become unmanageable, there's a lot of that's a very vague statement. It's a huge gray area. I was in a place in my life where I knew something was up, and I was in this constant state of, oh shit, I need to get a handle on this. Like I need to try this, I need to try that, I need to do this, I need to do that. And that's more or less the unmanageability in the beginning, at least that the book is talking about, where we try all these different methods, we try all these different things, all in an effort to continue to justify what we're thinking in the back of our minds. For me, I was in a constant state of, oh shit, I need to figure out what's wrong with me, right? I need to figure out why I can't stop drinking, or why I can't just have one or two or three. And then why I have this constant obsession with alcohol even when I'm not drinking. Like stone cold sober, I was restless, irritable, discontent, and I didn't know why, And so that, I think, drove me into my first meeting to find answers. And when I was there, even like I met a couple of individuals I talked to before the meeting, and then I was immediately like roped in because they automatically knew, or I felt that they knew exactly what I was talking about. And so like my first meeting, when I first introduced myself, I was like, hi, I'm Sean. I think I'm an alcoholic, and everybody was like, well, you're in the right place, brother. Keep coming back, do this and that. And then like my second night, I met my sponsor. He asked me, two very simple questions. And I was like, yep, you're right. I am. And again, that doesn't happen for everybody. But I remember very specifically for a long time, I had that question looming in the back of my head just because of the unmanageability of the drinking itself, right? Like I was able to have a job, have a family, do all these things, but the bigger part of that is that it was always on my mind.
Yeah, I mean, same here. We all know that like the as you said, restless and irritable, discontent, as it says on XXVIII on the big book, it says they are irritable, discontent unless they can experience a sense of ease and comfort, which comes at once by taking a few drinks. I think anybody that has drank because of a bad day, a good day, whatever it may be, that whether it's a shot or beer, you take that first sip, like your body just kind of like
Yeah.
It's a breath of fresh air at that time. But the thing is, now that we've given in to the obsession of the drinking, that's when like a fucking catapult of holy shit, I'm more thirsty, I'm more thirsty, more thirsty, and you can't. Well, I couldn't stop. I mean, I can only speak for myself when it comes to this, and I mean, I would be completely blacked out before I even thought, oh, I've had enough. And it's like, bitch, you had enough 10 drinks ago, but I never thought that way, and I think that's why it's so important that through becoming sober, you have to have a psychic change
Hmm.
entirely. The way we look at liquor, we have to see it as destructive and not beneficial to us. Because at what point were any of us drunk as shit and a good contributing member to ourselves in society or our families? Fucking never.
Yeah, never.
Like we were always screwing shit up. We were hurting people, lying to people, hurting ourselves, killing ourselves.
Creating more unmanageability.
Yeah, exactly. So I mean, like my life, I mean, I was oh my god, what is it? A functioning alcoholic.
Hmm.
I like as just like you, I was able to maintain employment. I was able to not always call into work. It was a few times I called in being hungover, but I mean, at least I was able to maintain employment. I was able at that time to maintain education, but I wasn't able to maintain myself. Everything around me seemed perfect, except me.
Right.
Like my internal mentality and my internal self was just fucking fighting. And every time I would drink, I'd wake up and I'm like, I can't keep doing this to myself. And that's why going to these rooms, I knew I needed help. I always had that firm resolution the following day of like, bitch, get it together.
Never doing this again.
Yeah, I can't do this shit again, bitch.
Yeah.
And, but never once did I stick to my guns. I mean, it was within 24 hours of telling myself I can't do this anymore to being immediately back to drinking, partying, thinking, oh, bitch, everything's okay.
All lit up again. Yeah.
And it's not. And so I think for me, finally able to go into those rooms and say, I'm Holden, I'm an alcoholic, I fully broke down. Like,
You did.
it was it was an emotional roller coaster because it wasn't just telling roughly 12 to 15 people in a room that I was an alcoholic, but it was for me and my mentality, the fucked up way it is, every person in that room was another me. And so I had 15 Holdens looking back at me, like seeing the hurt in my eyes, seeing the hurt, the fear, and the destruction I've kind of caused myself over the years. And that's when I finally turned and was like, okay, I'm not just a drinker anymore. Because if I was, for one, I wouldn't be in a 12-step program.
Yeah, you'd be able to stop.
Yeah, I would be able to stop, and that wasn't really the case. And there's been multiple times in my sobriety that I've almost slipped up
Hmm.
because I've allowed my own head to be my biggest enemy, my own thoughts. And so working the steps and going through all this has helped me evolve into kind of like a freaking Pokemon, how you evolve into a new character, you evolve into a new person that's able
Yeah.
to handle different circumstances better, different battles, per se, a lot better. And I know for me that was super, super important. So for you, Sean, like finally conceding that you were an alcoholic, how did that make a difference in your life, in your day to day?
I immediately had I felt like almost as if a weight had been lifted off my shoulders. And it's something that I subconsciously, again, like I said before, already knew. But now it's like, okay, I have the answer. And the importance of my sponsor at that time, um, or any sponsor for that matter, is okay, now that you have the answer, what are we going to do about it? And so he was there to not only catch me, but to help me walk along a new path, one that I didn't know anything about. And I had put my complete and total trust into somebody I had met hours before. And I was in a place in my life where I was able to trust that person wholeheartedly, because I had something that he wanted. Um, and I immediately started to notice more stuff about myself, and I was less focused on what everybody else thought of me. So those are just a couple of things that I noticed change immediately. Um, and it's crazy because none of the changes in the beginning had anything to do with my life outside of myself, if that makes sense. So all the stuff at work was still happening, all the stuff at home was still happening, all the stuff, in traffic was still happening. The world was still happening, but I felt like I had tapped into something that in within myself, mentally, spiritually, physically, that was A, always there, but B, I had been ignoring and fighting against for a long time. And so those are the immediate changes that I recognized, mainly spiritual. My sponsors, again, very much so big into the whole spirituality aspect of working the program because that's where the nuts and bolts of the program is. And so I was very fortunate enough um, to like have God put him in my life at a time where I needed it the most. And that really helped change things for me immediately, like right out of the gate. Granted, things, like I said before, things were still happening. Like the ball had already been rolling, but I was able to have a complete change of perspective inwardly about myself. And I was able to recognize my character defects, my shortcomings, and things like that within a short matter of time. Again, like my sponsor worked with me through the steps very quickly. Um, and, I ask him sometimes, and we talk about even to this day, why that is, why we went through the steps quickly. And he was like, well, that's just how I felt you needed to work them. And it's different for everybody. There's no um, perfect recipe for each individual person that works for everybody. And he would tell me, yeah, like in the beginning, the steps were meant to be worked quick, and you checked all the boxes, you fit all the criteria, so we wanted to get you on your way, um, so that you can start helping other people get what they want.
Yeah, and I think it's really important to kind of go back to the sponsorship when it comes to unmanageability because, like as you said, life doesn't really stop. I mean, school still happens, work still happens, the bullshit of everybody else are surrounding us, and even our own BS that we deal with in our own mind, especially when it comes to early sobriety, we deal with a lot of things that want to take us back to that drink. Many excuses, but now it's so important to have that sponsor and somebody to lean on that you entrust entirely with everything. Because, I mean, at least for me, when it came to letting shit out, when it comes to step 4, step 5, and everything and so on, letting all those secrets out
Hmm.
was super beneficial to me. And it goes back to things weren't manageable because I didn't know how to manage them,
Right.
and that sponsor allowed me to put things in a different perspective from an outlook, somebody of understanding. Because unless the other person has dealt with alcoholism themselves, they won't truly understand what we go through. Yes, you could find a counselor that is an addiction counselor, but unless that person suffered addiction themselves, they know the scientific aspect, not the spirituality
Right.
of everything. And they can't really help you beyond what they're taught in school. And even doctors and everything like that can't truly understand the psychological aspect of alcoholism because everybody is so different. So, of course, now coming into sobriety, of course, we are still powerless over the first drink. I mean, because we already know um, the moment that we take the first drink, what's going to happen? It's just going to be a domino effect of more drinks, and until we're blacked out and hospitalized, especially because from experience of whatever the people have told me is that it seems that when you go into a relapse, you kind of go harder than ever before because you have a
Right.
head full of sobriety and a belly full of beer or booze, and it makes you even sicker mentally because you already know what the fuck you should have been doing
Right.
to not drink. But how more manageable is your life now that you're sober, coming up on what, 10 months, than it was when you first stepped into the room?
I mean, I would say there are still aspects of my life that are unmanageable, um, because there are a lot of things that I recognize now that I can't control. And so for me now, the unmanageability comes with, or it comes from a place that I've accepted that I can't control the outside world, right? Um, I was listening to a speaker not too long ago talk about the unmanageabilities of day-to-day life, and a lot of it is stuff that we have no control over. Like the pizza delivery guy showing up 30 minutes late. That was one of those things. And he would say, you can bet your ass I would drink over that in the past. And it's like, now it just seems kind of crazy, but at the time, like those are the things that at least for me, that I would tend to make as my own make as my own problems. And it's like, now that I've learned that I can't control everybody, everything all the time, um, I would say my life is still unmanageable, but I know how to stay in my lane, stay on my side of the street, worry about myself, focus on my mental, physical, and spiritual condition to where that stuff doesn't faze me. And that's, I think, a huge part of step one is recognizing the unmanageability part, um, not playing the blame game, and realizing that the unmanageability, a lot of it is created by us and cast upon other people, which we take offense to, or we get sore at other people, and it's like we're the ones doing it to ourselves, right? That's the whole self-destructive thing behind addiction or alcoholism. I mean, so to answer your question, like, yeah, there are still unmanageable parts of my life, but if I continue to grow along spiritual lines, which helps my physical and mental state, like I really don't have any reason to have a relapse or go drink again. And as long as my spiritual condition is fit or continues to grow, like the unmanageable parts of life that are outside of my control will continue to happen, and the best thing that I can do is to continue to better myself to where that I can deal, cope, handle, and respond in a more so normal way to those parts of life.
Yeah, I think for me, like unmanageability when it comes to life, I have shit handled. I mean, my life's absolutely perfect.
Right.
No, okay. We both know that's a damn lie.
I'm calling BS.
No, but the thing is, as Sean said, there's so many things we can't manage. I mean, we can somewhat manage ourselves with certain tools of the program, but when it comes to work, bosses, this, that, and the other, we can't control their thinking. We can't control the way they have to deal with things. And so the program teaches us tools how to cope better with those things that drive us to the bottle. Because now when somebody at work pisses me off, a road rage incident, a friend of mine not responding, or a boy problem, whatever it may be, my first thought right now is not to go back to the bottle. It's to understand why they may be doing this.
Right.
And to just accept the fact that we can't change the way they do it. We can only change the way we perceive things.
Mm-hmm.
And that goes back to the complete psychic change, is to just perceive things a lot different. And when things get a little bit crazy, to turn our minds to somebody else we can help, turn our minds to something more productive rather than going to the bottle. And I think that's where the serenity prayer that we say it, of course, at every beginning of every meeting, is so and so and so important, because we have to understand that there's not things we can't change.
Yeah.
In life in general, in the world. I mean, we can't stop Ukraine. We can't stop this. We can't stop that. And we have to accept it. So, of course, one, we have to accept the things we cannot change. And then there are things we can change in our life. Like the three things, I mean, as the book says, is people, places, things. I know for a fact that was so important for me. I had to change my entire habits around drinking. I was going to the bar 5+ nights a week. And of course, that's the place. I can't go there no more if I'm not going to drink. Things was my mentality. And people was to surround myself with people. Yes, I still have a couple friends that I used to drink with, but a majority of them I don't really speak with anymore. And just to surround myself with people that have the same goal as me when it comes to staying sober. And so when I do hit these hiccups, because if I call a drunk friend, an old drinking buddy with my problems, they're not going to really know how to talk me through them. without being like, oh, well, just meet me at the bar, we'll talk about it.
Right.
I mean, that's literally going to be the response. And so it's and the courage, because it was so hard to go from seeing these people 5 nights a week to now twice a month, if that anymore. So of course, the middle of that prayer is courage to change the things I can, because there are things we could change. There are habits we can change during life to steer clear of that bottle. And then we have to know the difference.
Mm-hmm.
We have to be able to identify what we can and cannot change. And I think that's where the wisdom comes in, the wisdom to know the difference, because our alcoholic thinking automatically goes to people are coming for us. People are doing this because they want to hurt us, even though there was no malintention.
Right.
And so we need to understand that not everybody's out to get us.
No.
And not everybody is there to drive us back to the bottle. So I think it's the wisdom to know the difference of what we can and cannot change. And I think that's manageability kind of coming tenfold, coming around the block here,
Mm-hmm.
is in order to manage your life and your alcoholism, you have to have a psychic change and a different way of thinking about it. Because if you don't, and you still are stuck in the same way of thinking of, oh, well, this bitch pissed me off, so I'm going to go drink. Like, if you don't change that way of thinking, you're immediately, next week at work, somebody's going to piss you off, something's going to happen, a boy's going to break up with you or reject you, and you're going to drink over it. So I think that's so important. So, I mean, what for you, Sean, what do you think is the most important thing of creating things to be manageable rather than just everything being a fucking burning building?
Well, for me, I think a lot of it has to do with, again, God, higher power. And to kind of retouch on what I had already said previously is the next biggest change that I had noticed, or the most important one, is that when placing a full reliance upon a higher power or God, I was able to start matching calamity with serenity. So you had talked about the serenity prayer, previously, where I would match calamity with calamity, right? Everything was tenfold worse than what it needed to be. Your mind starts racing, you start doing things, you start thinking in a way that is destructive, not helpful towards others. And that's kind of the whole, to go back to unmanageability, like that's where the unmanageability comes from. It's of our own making, whether, all of the justifications that we make for whatever, right, wrong, or indifferent, like those are the things that in the past I was not doing or able to understand, which caused more unmanageability. And I wasn't able to see that I was the one creating more unmanageability. And as long as, now, if I stay on my side of the street, clean up my side of the street, and continue to take inventory and right the wrongs, and work a program, like that's the whole thing, is continuing to work a program, continuing to use the tools, like what you had said, that we were given, to make our futures better, right? Like our past, like, yeah, we don't want to forget about it, but we want to learn from it. And so I think that's one of the other most important things, is learning from the past, using the tools that we have now to make our future better. That way our future's past is not as bad.
Yeah, for sure. And I think before we end the episode, in order to learn the tools, work the program, and learn the tools to learn how to manage, learn how to cope, learn how to understand things in our life that happen on a day to day, it's one admittance to the fact of that we are powerless over alcohol and that our lives have become unmanageable. Because if your life had become fully fucking manageable, I mean, if my life had become manageable, I would have stopped drinking. I would have gotten my shit together. I wouldn't have spent $18,000 a year on liquor. And so I think it was that first step, is admittance. Like conceding to the fact of that I was an alcoholic and that I had zero control of alcohol, or actually really anything in my life, in order for me to finally accept that fact,
Right.
and move forward and learn the tools and now be able to cope and manage a little bit better.
Right.
So, well, thank you so much for joining us today, Sean. Is there anything that hasn't been said that you would like to touch on?
Not really. Only the one thing I do want to say is, at least again, speaking on my own experience, I could admit to a room full of people that I was an alcoholic. I could say it in a meeting, but unless I truly, truly, truly believe that, and without the help of my sponsor, I don't think I could have gotten there on my own. So again, having a sponsor is critical um, to the success of your program. Um, but unless if I wasn't able to admit that to myself and believe that wholeheartedly, like in my heart of hearts, that I was an alcoholic, then admitting it to other people, I mean, it means nothing, right? And so I had to admit that to myself, and I remember having this kind of breakdown moment, um, like literally within my first week, where like yeah, I had said it in the rooms, but then after going through steps 1 through 3 with my sponsor, I was like, damn it, I am an alcoholic. Like this is something that I can't just run away from. I can't just wish it away. Just as much as I would have wished away everything that happened while I was drinking. That's not how life works. So it wasn't until I was able to concede to my innermost self that I was an alcoholic that I began to see results. So I had to admit it to myself first and foremost and believe it because of the knowledge that I had been given or learned, that I was able to continue to work the steps, A, with an open mind, and B, work them with the desperation of a drowning man, that I began to see results. So, at least from my own experience, admitting that I was powerless was really, really hard to do. And not because it's a hard thing to do, but because, um, like physically a hard thing to do, but mentally I didn't know how to do it. Spiritually, I didn't know how to do it. So that's what was the hardest part for me. And yeah, it was a hard, jagged pill to swallow. And obviously, within my first week, I didn't really know what it meant. But again, working through the steps, working through the program, um, it has become like I am grateful for the fact that I am an alcoholic, because it's taught me so much and how to live along spiritual lines and live a life that is tenfold better than what it was in the past.
Oh my God, that is so freaking true. Because, yes, life in sobriety is kind of a roller coaster.
Absolutely.
But some of the best times that I had while completely annihilated drunk is far worse than some of the worst days that I have sober. Because even though like the sober journey is kind of a roller coaster, it's even when it's at its low, it's still high.
Right.
And then when it's high, you're on this fucking cloud, and you're like, you wake up and you're just in this intensely great mood. You're nice to people, you're nice to yourself, you're nice to others around you, and you just are like, holy shit, I'm high on life.
Right.
Like, I mean, there's been a couple days where I'm like, holy shit, was something in my drink last night? Like some kind of like happy pill, because there are days that I wake up that I'm just like grateful to be alive, grateful to have a job, no matter how crazy it may be, grateful just to be here and be present and have the people around me. So I want to thank you again, Sean, for coming on to the Sober Unicorn again.
It's a pleasure.
Thank you again for listening to today's episode. Hit that follow button to be notified about new episodes every week. If you'd like to reach out to us, you can find us on Instagram at The Sober Unicorn Podcast, or on our website at thesoberunicornpodcast.com. There you will find our episodes, as well as our very own sober-owned shop, featuring products from small businesses that are sober-owned. And remember, everyone, don't be normal, be a unicorn, but better yet, be a sober unicorn.